Good morning. Welcome back. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, sir.
So I have posted a link in the chat box. Maybe you can go through it. Let me share my screen.
So the link is not visible, sir. Can you resend it?
Yeah, 1 second. I'll just send it. It is in the chat box. I will post it again. 1 second. So this is related to the question somebody asked in the last class. How many data points are needed for learning? So this article discusses that. So yes, the last class I mentioned that in statistics, we say that we need about 10 data points for each variable. So this article tells you, why we have that 1 in 10 thumb rule, that is 10 cases per predictor. It's from statistics, it's from the probability distribution using a target reliability. They have calculated this number. We need about 10 times n number of data points for statistical learning. But for computer vision, for image classification, the rule of thumb, he says, is 1000 images per class. And this number can go down significantly if one uses pre-trained models. I will explain what is this pre-trained model, and when I talk about deep learning, we will discuss this. But this is roughly the number of data we need from a statistical point of view. And this number is not arbitrary. It is based on this theory, Vapnik-Chevronic is the VC theory, statistical learning theory, which we are going to discuss briefly when I talk about support vector machines. Okay, so that is to answer that question. Now there was another question about yeah, the other question was about regression. We are going to do a small exercise. So now we have, let me see. We have about 70, 80 people, a small enough class. So we can do some exercise. With a big class like 200, it's very difficult to do that because people are at different skill levels. Some are very fast, some are very slow. So it doesn't work out very well in a big class. But since it is a small enough class now, we will try to work out some exercises on regression. Let me quickly summarize doing. So we are looking at the learning algorithms. In the first lecture, we looked at the learning tasks, the kind of tasks for which we can use machine learning. We saw that machine learning is successful for certain well-defined mathematical problems. So we saw what these are. And now we are looking at the algorithms for achieving those tasks. So first we discussed about rote learning. We discussed about rule-based reasoning, case-based reasoning. And then now we are looking at statistical learning. Okay? And we started with regression. The simplest one is simple ordinary linear regression using least squares method. And I discussed how this is done. So you have an objective function to minimize, which is the loss function. Loss is nothing but the difference between the prediction and the actual value. Right? So we have a least squares, take the square of the errors sum over all the data points, and we want to minimize that. So that is the least squares approach, and this can be done easily by taking the derivative, set the derivative to 0, and when you do that, you get this equation, x transpose x. This is the x is the data matrix. You take the transpose, multiply by itself. So I said that when the data is centered, this term here, this x transpose x, is nothing but the covariance matrix. It is of dimension n by n, where n is the number of variables. It's not the number of data points, it's the number of variables. So we have an n by n matrix, which is computed using the input data, and multiplied by the weight vector. These are the unknown variables we want to compute. You have W1, W2, and so on. You have a weight vector. So the coefficient matrix multiplied by the weight vector equal to right hand side. Right hand side is also a constant matrix. It's a column vector, again computed using the input data, x transpose multiplied by y. Y is the output value for each variable. So when you do this multiplication, again you get n rows and 1 column. So this represents a system of linear simultaneous equations. We want to find out the value of W, W1, W2, and so on. We can do that by solving the system of linear simultaneous equation. And one simple way you can do it is by taking the inverse of this matrix. This x transpose x matrix is a square matrix. You take the inverse of this matrix, multiply by the right hand side, you straight away get the value for W. So this is how we do the regression. Ordinary least squares regression is simple enough. You can just do it in spreadsheet yourself. You don't need to take any libraries or anything. You can easily code it yourself. It's very simple. We will do this small exercise because it brings out a lot of interesting ideas which become important later on when we talk about artificial neural network. All the regression we do in machine learning is only a sophisticated version of this basic regression we do in statistics. Statisticians have been doing regression long before machine learning techniques became popular. It's a statistical technique. It's a technique which is taught under mathematics. It's a very simple thing, so we will do that. So let us take a simple example. So this is, are you able to see my screen? I'm now showing the
Yes, sir.
Excel sheet.
Yes, sir.
Right,
Yes, sir.
okay. I will enlarge a little bit.
Can you just zoom in? Thanks.
Is it visible enough?
Yes, sir.
Are you able to see the
Yes, sir.
sheet clearly?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes, sir.
yes,
sir.
Perfectly
Okay.
all right, sir. Perfectly all right.
Tell me again.
It's perfectly all right, sir. Carry on, sir.
Okay, okay, good. Okay, so what I have prepared here, we have two variables, x1 and x2, and we have a corresponding value of the output variable y, and we want to find the relationship between the input variable and the output variable. So we want to do it through regression. Now, before we do it, if you have Excel with you, you can try to do it yourself. You learn quite a bit by doing this exercise. So if you want, you can open your spreadsheet and repeat what I'm doing here. But if you don't have that, if you're not comfortable also, you can just observe. So the data, let's look at this data. So x1 has value 0 and x2 value 0. The output is 0. X1 is 0, X2 is 1, output is 1. Can you guess what is this relationship? It means something, right? It's not very arbitrary. It is some particular kind of function.
It's
Can
a
somebody
binary
guess
addition.
what is
Binary addition.
it? Is? Oh, binary addition. Okay. Anybody else?
XOR gate. Basically, if two inputs are equal and the output is 0, it means it is XOR.
Right. It is an exclusive OR operation.
Right,
It
right,
is
sir.
in computer science, we have this Boolean operations. So a simple operation that you are familiar with is AND. AND returns true, that is 1, only if both the input variables are 1. Only then it gives 1, otherwise it gives 0. That is the AND operation you are familiar with. Another Boolean operation is OR. OR is one of the input variables is 1. If one of the input variables is true, then the output is 1. That is true. Otherwise, it is 0. That is the OR operation. Exclusive OR operation is like this. If at least one of the variables is true, the output is true. So you get a 0, 1 or 1, 0, you get 1. But if both the variables are, then it outputs 0. This is called the exclusive OR operation. So these are the Boolean operation, Boolean functions. Now, these functions are important because in machine learning, we are not always just looking at numerical relationship between variables. We want the system to learn this type of condition because a lot of decision making depends on the Boolean logic, logic using this type of relationship and or exclusive or and so on. Okay. So the question is whether with regression we are able to learn this type of relationship. So we have some data here which perfectly represents the exclusive OR operation. And we want to see whether with ordinary least squares regression, it can learn this type of relationship. Okay, so this is what we are going to do. And we are doing it because later on I'm going to discuss about artificial neural network. We will see whether an artificial neural network is able to represent this type of relationship, whether it is able to learn this type of relationship from data. Okay, so let us do it with ordinary least squares regression first. So we have this data x1, x2, and you have y. And I mentioned to you in the last class that we also need a bias term. In general, we learn a relationship of the form wx plus b. So we have a bias term. So it is easy to incorporate the bias term also into the same expression by putting 1 in the last column. You add an extra column containing 1. So this is the last column which represents the bias term. So you can see that if you multiply the X matrix with W1, W2, B, so each row you multiply with the column. So you get W1, X1 plus W2, X2 plus B. So it represents this relationship Wx plus B. So we can create another column representing the bias term everywhere, and all the other places we have exactly the same data as in the original data set. So this is my X matrix. So my X matrix is this 3 columns, and I have 4 data points, and I want to find out the value of W1, W2, and B. So we want to find out 3 values. And the equation we saw was X transpose X multiplied by W equal to X transpose Y, the system of linear simultaneous equation. So the first step is to calculate this X transpose X. Now, those who are familiar with Excel, if you know how to type in these equations, it's very simple. You can see my expression in the formula bar at the top. So all I do is, I select this X transpose X will return 3 by 3 matrix because we have 3 rows and 3 columns. So I select 3 rows and 3 columns. I type in an equal to symbol. In Excel, we type in all the equations starting with an equal to symbol. So I put in an equal to symbol and I use the function mmult. This is the matrix multiplication function. So I type in mmult in bracket. You need to give 2 matrices. The first matrix is the transpose of the X matrix. So this is my X matrix. To take the transpose of that, I use the function transpose. transpose of A8 to C11. So this is the matrix I want to transpose. And the second matrix is the same as the X matrix, A8 to C11. And for all the matrix expressions, there is a special keyboard sequence you have to use, Shift Control Enter. Only then it gets entered as a matrix expression. So if you are trying it yourself, you can type in equal to mult bracket transpose bracket the data matrix 1, complete the bracket, comma, data matrix, and complete the bracket, and then press Shift Control Enter. Okay, if you want, I can do it again and show it here. I select 3 rows and 3 columns. Type in equal to, the function is mult. It is expecting 2 arrays. The first one should be the transpose of the X matrix. So I type in transpose bracket. It is expecting the array to be transposed. So I select this matrix, complete the bracket. So that is the transpose function. Put a comma. It is expecting the next matrix, which is again X matrix without the transpose. I put a bracket to complete the function mult and press Shift Control Enter. Right? So we get the matrix multiplication of X transpose and X. So it is exactly the same what I have done here. Okay? So this is still not the covariance matrix because the data is not centered, but doesn't matter. For linear regression, you don't need to center the data. It will work even if you don't center the data. And now right hand side, we have X transpose multiplied by Y. Again, you can use the same expression, mult transpose of the X matrix, comma, Y. Okay, so this is my Y matrix. So again, you do the same thing and press Shift Control Enter. You select 3 rows and 1 column. Type in equal to mult transpose first matrix, comma, the Y matrix, so that you get this. So this is the system of linear simultaneous equations I want to solve. X transpose X multiplied by W equal to X transpose Y. And the way you can do it is just take the inverse of this matrix, multiply by the right hand side. So this is the inverse. If you want to do the inverse, you can use the M inverse function, which is in Excel. So I type in, you select 3 rows and 3 columns, type in equal to M inverse, the matrix which you want to invert, which is this, and press Shift Control Enter. So you get the inverse of this matrix. Now I can multiply the inverse of the matrix with the right hand side. You get W1 equal to 0, 10 to the power minus 16, which is 0. W2 equal to 10 to the power minus 16, which is again 0. And the bias term is equal to 0.5. So this is the set of values which gives the closest match with the data. Now with this W1, W2 and B, we can predict what is the value given by our regression equation. So all you have to do is multiply the X matrix with W, you get the predicted value. So again, I've used the mult function. This is X1, X2, just copied it from here. I think I have copied, let me just check, A8 to C11, right? So it has taken X1, X2 and B, all the 3 terms multiplied by the values of W1, W2 and B. So these are the predicted values. So now you can examine what is the error in all the prediction. So the error in prediction is equal to the actual value minus the predicted value. Every data point has an error, but what you see is the errors are balanced. If you take all the sum of the errors, it is 0. So it is found a mean line and the points are distributed around equally around the mean line. So you get some with minus 0.5, some with plus 0.5, overall it is 0. And if you want to find out the mean square error, you can square each term, sum it, and you can see what is the mean square error. Okay, so this is, yeah, you can use regression function, but I wanted to show you how this can be done. Because it is useful. If you want to try out some other form of regression, It is useful to understand how this is done. So that's why I explained this. So you see that the ordinary least squares regression is not able to approximate the correct exclusive OR function. You get large errors. In fact, errors are very large, 0.5. So or with ordinary least squares regression, we are not able to learn this function. Okay. Now, let me do another, the equations are written in very general terms, so I can even change the value for y and see what we get. Let us see if it can represent an AND condition. Or let's say take, okay, AND condition. So this should become 0, this should become 0, and this should become 1. If both the input variables are 1, you get an output of 1. For this, you see, errors are smaller, but it is at least it is reasonable. Even though it's still not perfectly accurate, it cannot pass the line through every data point, but still it is able to do that. So that it is even for the AND function, we have a problem. Let's try the OR function. This should be 1. If at least one of the variables is 1, it should get 1. Again, it doesn't pass through all the data points exactly. There is a small error. But exclusive OR function is something which it cannot really represent accurately. It is a kind of a nonlinear function which cannot be learned through this form of ordinary least squares. Okay. So now coming back, now we also discussed, there are situations where this ordinary least squares regression doesn't work. That is when this matrix becomes singular, when the determinant becomes 0. You cannot invert the matrix, so we will not be able to calculate the value of W. So let us try that. All I have to do is, make sure that the variables are correlated. X1 and X2 are correlated. So I put 0 here. It is still not. It is still able to invert it. But now I change this to 1. So now everything is correlated. So now look at. Now let me see 0 0. Okay, small mistake. I need to copy this from here. Okay. So X matrix is copied correctly. So now it cannot invert the matrix. Excel is not invert the matrix. You cannot find the value for W1, W2 because the determinant is 0. We can check the determinant of the matrix and determ. Okay, determinant is 0. That's why we are not able to invert this matrix. Now we will do another exercise to understand this idea of multicollinearity. Again, this is useful when we look at other forms of regression. So I've taken another data. Okay, what I have done here is similar to the previous one. I have x1, x2, but now I have also one more variable x3. And what I have done is I have purposely made x3 dependent on x1 and x2. x3 is a linear combination of x1 and x2. So what I have done is x3 is equal to 0.2 times x1 plus 0.8 times x2. So these variables are not independent. So you see that, but if you look at individual values, you don't see they are related because it is not a straight line. It is a plane. X3 is on the plane defined by x1 and x2. So you will not be able to quickly realize that the variables are correlated. But the regression algorithm doesn't know that we have prepared the data in this form. So let us see what happens when we do regression in this case. And the value of y, I have a specific equation I have used. I said x1 plus x2 plus x3 plus 2. So all the data points, so there is a perfect relationship. If regression is successful, you should be able to learn exactly the same relationship, x1 plus x2 plus x3 plus 2. After you do the regression, you should get this. But see, let's see what happens when you try this data. Now, again, as before, all I have done is I added another column for the bias term, x1, x2, x3, and b. The other one is just copied from above. I do again do the matrix multiplication. I get x transpose x. And now when you look at the determinant, it is 10 to the power minus 15. It is not exactly 0 because of some numerical error. Because of the floating point representation, it doesn't become exactly 0, but it becomes a very small value, 10 to the power minus 15. And it doesn't know that this is because of some numerical error. So when I try to invert it, it's still able to invert it. Last time we saw some not a value, it gave an error. But now it is able to invert the matrix, but you get very large values. Inverse becomes very large value, 10 to the power 14, and so on. Because the determinant becomes in the denominator when you do the inverse. So that's why you get large errors. So this is the inverse of the matrix, and the system doesn't know that we have the problem of multicollinearity. So it will just compute. So I calculate W by just taking the inverse multiplied by the right hand side. So what I get is W1 equal to 6.9, W2 equal to minus 3, W3 equal to minus 2.2. And b equal to 2. So this is what I get, whereas the original equation I started with was W1 equal to 1, W2 equal to 1, W3 equal to 1, b equal to 2. Only the bias term has been computed correctly. All the others are completely wrong. And when you calculate the predicted value, just like before, you multiply by the weight vector with the X matrix. This is the actual value for y. This is the predicted value. You can see there are large errors. So the errors are very large. This is a mean square error. So this is what happens when the data is collinear. Now, all you need to do is make it non-collinear, but changing just one data point. Instead of 1.8 here, I'm just going to make it as 2. Now you see that determinant is 0.16, the inverse is okay, and you get back the original equation, W1 equal to 1, W2 equal to 1, W3 equal to 1, B equal to 2, which is the equation I started with. So it worked correctly and the errors are very low, almost 0. It's able to find an equation passing through all the data points. Okay, so now you have any questions? So this was another question, there was somebody asked last time when I discussed about regression. Anybody has any questions? Everything is okay? Okay, then we will,
I have a doubt,
yeah.
sir. So for removing the collinearity, you have actually changed the original data a bit, but still we are getting a perfect answer. Is that what is happening at the end?
No, we can change the data. That's why, when we select the data, we should make sure that there is variation in all the direction.
Okay.
So what I mentioned last time was, the where was that? See, the data might be lying along a particular direction. So in the perpendicular direction, there is no variation. That's why, we are not able to find out what is the variation in that direction. Now, if you make sure that data is well distributed, that is variation in all possible directions, then you don't have the problem with collinearity.
Okay.
It's a
Yeah.
fundamental problem of the data itself.
Data. Okay, sir.
See, if you give data only along a straight line, if you take a point perpendicular to that line, it doesn't know how to interpolate because that information is not available. Okay? That's why in the last data point, I just changed 1.8 to 2. So you have some variation in the perpendicular direction. Then data is now more collinear. So you have at least one data point in the perpendicular direction. With that, it's able to predict.
Okay, sir.
Correct?
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so we will come back to the same example when we discuss about artificial neural network. We'll see whether artificial neural network is able to predict correctly in this situation. Now, we discussed this before. We have 4 data points here. And if you use linear regression, you get the average straight line. And if you use a second order polynomial, this is actually using the trend line in Excel. This is the equation which the Excel has learned to pass through all the data points. So I said there are large errors here. Okay, we have already done this. So I'm going to ask you to do this exercise. So those who submitted these exercises have deleted your responses because these exercises have to be done after I discuss in the class. So I saw that there were a lot of rubbish answers in the Google form. So I deleted everything. So these have to be done in the class. So if I have deleted your response, I'm sorry, I have to do it again. Because I want this to be done after I discuss in the class. Okay, so I'll give you some time to do this exercise. What is the level of training error? I'm not talking about prediction, the test error during testing, but during training, what is the level of error when a second degree polynomial is fitted through 4 data points? So you have 2 options, high and low. What do you think will be the prediction error on unseen data in general? If you get some unseen data, which is not the same as the training data, what will you think? What do you think will be the prediction error? And what is the reason for that? In general, what can you say about the relationship between training error and testing error? Is there any relationship? Whether training error is always higher than testing error or testing error is always higher than training error. So I want to think and answer this. And after that, we will look at your answers. Okay, spend 2 minutes to answer this question.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, there is something which is flashing on the screen on the top right. Can you check it once? Maybe it is your Zoom, yeah, the WebEx meeting or something like that. Like,
Right. I know I have a second laptop on which I see that, but I don't know how to correct it. I think it is some either some resolution problem, or let me see if I can. No, it doesn't go away. I think it is gone now, right?
Yes, Professor. Now it's completely all right.
Oh, it's coming back.
Coming
No, I
again
think
now.
it is a problem with the resolution because I'm using a screen with high resolution. So I think it's not able to transmit that properly.
Okay. That's fine, Professor.
Okay. I'll use another laptop in the afternoon. After the break, I'll use another one. Okay, so let us look at your answers. What is the level of training error? So majority have written low, which is the correct answer. So if you look at the points, you see that the curve, the second degree polynomial, passes through all the data points almost accurately, exactly, right? So the training error, if you plot the training error, it is going to be very low. So what most of you have got it correct. So the answer is training error will be very low, and you will be misled by the training error. You will think it has learned correctly because the training error is very low. But what will be the prediction error? So most of you have written high, which is correct. So if you come back to this, if you get some data point somewhere here at 1.5 or 3 or 3.5, there will be more than 100% error in the prediction, because the polynomial has a very strange curve. You have this kind of oscillation, which are very common for high order polynomials. In the case of two dimension, we can visualize and see there is a problem, but in multi dimensions, you won't even realize that it has learned this type of absurd functions, polynomial nonlinear functions. And this was amplified because I purposefully created this example. What I did was I made these 2 points very close by with a small the value increase in the value of the output variable. So it had difficulty in passing through both the points. So it had no option but to fit as a line something like this. So that created huge errors in other points. So this I did deliberately, but this can happen in practice. And you won't realize that it has done this because we are not able to examine the function and see what it has learned. It's a black box. Most people use these machine learning toolkits as black box. Look at the training error. If the training error is low, you think it has learned correctly, but that's not how it is going to be in practice. Let us see what you have written about What is the reason? Okay, problem is overfitting. This is another way of saying the same thing. Values are spread, high accuracy may is okay. Yeah, but there is no collinearity. It is data. When you say collinearity, you are talking only about input variables. But nobody has written that this is because we are using a higher order polynomial. Okay, polynomial may not represent the new data. So in general, if you use higher order polynomial, you might get this kind of problem. Okay, data is too small to accommodate. This is not correct. Data is not too small to accommodate a polynomial. You can have hundreds of data points very close to these points, and still you can get this. Only if it is properly distributed, then the polynomial will have a problem. Depending on how the data is distributed, you can have thousands of points. You can have 100 points near this one, and another 100 points near this 2.5, and you might still get exactly the same kind of polynomial. So it's not really the number of points. The problem is more fundamental than that. Less number of training examples. That's the same idea. Okay, good. Yeah, so you are able to understand the problem, and these are some of the main the difficulties with regression, ordinary least squares regression. Training error is calculated by the same data for your training accuracy rate. So training error may be low, testing error. This is correct in general. We can reduce the training error as low as possible by using models with more degrees of freedom, with more number of parameters. So training error can be made arbitrarily low using models of higher complexity, but testing error could be very high. The reverse is also true. Sometimes you get a high training error, but testing error could be very low. Can somebody tell me when this will happen? Training error is high. That is, it's not able to find a plane or a line passing through all the data points. So the training error might be high, but testing error could be low. When could this happen? Anybody?
It have sampling bias, sir.
Right. Yes. So what could happen is there will be certain points where the error might be even in the training data. In the general training error might be high, but there might still be certain points lying close to the hyperplane. So for those points, the training error could be very less. And suppose during testing, we are lucky to get those points while testing. Then you will see that the test error will be very low, but the training error could be high. So both could happen, but in general, the training error could be low, testing error could be much higher. Okay, so that is good. So you have thought about this problem of overfitting. So in general, we call it as overfitting. When you have overfitting, training error could be low, but the testing error could be very high. Now we move on to the next supervised learning technique, that is classification. I introduced this in the previous lecture. We are going to go into a little more mathematical details. Take the same example which we discussed in the first class. We put some accelerometers on a worker or an equipment, and we have the accelerometer readings. And I want to predict what the equipment is doing at that time. Now, in the first class, I said when you have an accelerometer, you have a time series of measurements. It's not a single value, but it is a time series. So in general, that is the case. and you can learn more from the time series than just using individual values. But for simplicity, I've taken a simple example where at any point you have only one value for the accelerometer, and we want to predict based on this one value from the accelerometer. Let me repeat, this is not the real case. In a real case, we'll have a series of data. We have a time series, but for this exercise, we have made it simple. So we have two accelerometers. At any time, we have two values for each of these variables. So you have two input variables and one output variable, which is the class label, the equipment state, whether it is idle or whether it is working, whether the equipment is idle or it is lifting something. So you look at this data and yeah, I think I have this same data. So we want to find out whether we can predict what the equipment is doing by using the accelerometer data. So I have plotted this here. So these are the values for accelerometer 1 and 2. 1, accelerometer 2. So I plotted the two axes, accelerometer 1, accelerometer 2. Now my question is, given the values of accelerometer 1 and accelerometer 2, are you able to predict what the activity is? So these are idle activities. Where you have these values for the accelerometer 1 and 2, and these are the lifting one. So my question is whether we can predict the equipment activity from the accelerometer reading. So this is the exercise. Now this is a different kind of exercise. It is not for submitting in your Google form. I think one data got disappeared somehow. Oh, somebody has drawn the data. Okay, only one at a time. Because I've given edit permission to everyone, and I want you to find out what is the line which separates. Okay, somebody has done it. Who has done this? Who has drawn this line? Can you explain why you have drawn this line?
To separate the accelerometer 1 and 2 means this is a hyperplane. So means one side you have one object prediction, and the other side we have another object prediction. So that is what. So we separate the line with the help of the
Right.
to knowing the.
So somebody has moved it. Somebody has moved the line. Okay. So I think now stop editing. I think we got the answer. Roughly we got the answer. This is what I wanted you to come up with. So the question is, what separates the idle class from the lifting class? So somebody has given the line. So it is in general, we want to find a hyperplane which separates the positive from the negative, the positive class from the negative class. In this case, idle class and the lifting class. So this is what we want to find out in the classification problem. Okay, let us move on. Everybody need not submit this. This is just to discuss in the class. Because if
Sir, I have a
everybody
doubt.
starts editing, yeah.
Sir, depends on person to person. We may choose to use different slopes here
Right.
to separate the data.
Right, very good. That is true. We are going to discuss that point. What exactly is the separation? What exactly is the discriminant? We want to find out. Okay, let us move on. Okay, so that is the classification problem. In 2 dimension, again, we can visualize it, but all these algorithms are useful in multiple dimension when we are not able to visualize and see what separates the two classes. So here, many of you were able to guess that there is a line, inclined line, which separates the two classes, idle and lifting, and the classification algorithm has to find this hyperplane. So we come to this idea of a binary linear classification. So I said all these problems can be formulated as mathematical optimization problems. So we'll see how this is formulated as an optimization problem. A binary linear classifier groups data points into two classes, positive and negative. For convenience, we call it positive and negative. The class label could be anything. These points are separated by a hyperplane, and the equation for a hyperplane is Wx plus b. I've written the summation notation. You can also write it in the angular bracket notation. Wx plus b equal to 0. Summation over all the variables, the weight factor multiplied by the variable plus b. When we talked about regression, I mentioned to you that this is the equation for a hyperplane. Okay, where xi is the ith variable, wi is the coefficient of the ith variable. Now we want, just like in the case of regression, we want to find the coefficients w, w1, w2, w3, and so on, such that all the positive points in the training data satisfies the equation wx plus b greater than or equal to 0, and the negative points satisfy wx plus b less than 0. Okay, so that is the definition of a the binary linear classification problem. Okay, so this is the geometric representation of that. In the case of regression, we wanted to find out what is the plane passing through all the data points. Here the problem is different. This is not a regression problem, it's a classification problem. Here we want to find a hyperplane which separates the training data into two classes, positive and negative. Okay, so you see that it's a different problem. It's not the same as regression. And but the meaning is the same. The W represents the normal to the hyperplane. You want to find the slope of the hyperplane which separates the positive and the negative classes. So W is the gradient. If you take the function, take the derivative with respect to each variable x1, x2, you get w1, w2, and so on. So this is nothing but the gradient vector, which is the normal to the hyperplane. So this is the normal to the hyperplane, w, and positive points are on one side, negative points are on the other side. Okay, so this is what we do in classification. We want to find out the values of w1, w2, and so on, such that we are able to separate the 2 points.
Sir,
Decision,
I have one question over here. Sir,
yeah.
if we do have the bias and variance trade-off over here, for example, let's say the negative as well as the positive class is at the same distance from the hyperplane.
Right.
So in that sense, which one has to be classified correctly, whether it is positive or negative? So if there is a trade-off, then what to do in that sense?
Yeah, no, I don't know whether I understood the question correctly, but let me tell you about this. You know, so W represents the slope. That is, you can rotate the hyperplane by changing the value of W1, W2, and so on. You can rotate the hyperplane. Now there is also the bias term B, which represents the distance from the origin. So by changing the value of B, we can make the plane pass through the origin or it can pass through any of the points at a distance from the origin. Now, by playing with W and B, both W and B are optimization variables. By playing with W and B, we can find an optimal hyperplane which separates the negative from the positive. Now, later on, I will show that problem is not fully defined. It's still not an optimization problem. There is something else. We need to add something else to it. So you mentioned about the equal distance from the positive and negative. You know, we'll come to that in a short while. That's an important idea, which is called the maximal margin hyperplane, which we are going to discuss later on. But,
yeah, sir. Yeah, that is my question. Yeah.
Right. So we will come to that later. So this decision surface, what separates the positive from the negative, that is called the discriminant. So we are finding a linear discriminant in this case. In the case of binary linear classification problem, we have a linear discriminant. In neural network literature, it's called a perceptron because that's how it developed initially. Learning involves determining the values of weights and bias. And how do you do that? In the case of regression, we saw that we write an objective function, we minimize it, take the derivative, set to 0, we get a neat equation, solve it, we get the value for W and B. But for classification problem, we cannot do it so straightforward. It becomes later on we will see, even in the case of a maximal margin classification, it becomes a quadratic optimization problem. It can only be solved numerically. We don't get a closed form expression for that. So people have developed algorithms for the optimization, for computing these values, iteratively modifying the parameters W and B using training data 1 point at a time. So with each data point, you check whether point is correctly classified. If it is correctly classified, you don't need to change the weight. If there is a misclassification, if the point is actually positive, but it is on the negative side of the hyperplane, that means we need to change the value of W and B. So you iteratively adjust the value of W and B such that there are no more classification errors. So this is what is done in machine learning. So we have different algorithms for doing that. We'll see some examples in a short while. So some algorithms, there is a perceptron algorithm. Later on, we are going to discuss about support vector machines.
Sir, I have a doubt, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, when you formulate the optimization problem for the classification of, I mean, deciding the parameters of hyperplane, like what will be driving the optimization, sir? Because
I'm
like,
going to discuss that. We are going to see what is the objective function. We'll see that later.
Okay, sir. Okay.
But at the moment, what we want to do is we want to minimize the classification error. The number of points that are misclassified, that has to be minimized.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Right? But that is not a good definition yet. We'll see why later on.
Okay,
so let us just quickly discuss the Rosenblatt's perceptron algorithm, and then we will take a break. Or do you have any questions until now before we do this exercise? Okay, we will do this and then we will take a break. So what we want to do is, as I mentioned, we want to remove all the misclassification. So this is the algorithm. This is the first neural network algorithm, the two-layered perceptron network. And this is how it works. So you repeat forever until there are no more misclassification. And inside that you have another loop. You repeat for each data point. So what we want is, we want the algorithm to predict correctly. So what we want to compute is what is predicted by the algorithm. So that is Wx, that is the dot product of the weight vector and the input vector. So that is Wx is the same as summation W1 x1 plus W2 x2 and so on, plus B. So this is what you have in the bracket here. That is the predicted value. The value predicted by the hyperplane. Now, if the point is a positive data point and it is predicting a positive value, so you will see that if you take the product yi multiplied by yp, you get a positive value, which means that there is no prediction error. So this product determines whether there is a prediction error. If the product is less than or equal to 0, if it's less than 0, that means there is a prediction error. There is a difference in sign between the actual value yi and the predicted value yp. So the product becomes a negative, which means that there is a prediction error. But if it is predicting correctly, if both are of the same sign, this will be greater than 0. That is, there is no prediction error. Now, if there is a prediction error denoted by this quantity becoming less than 0, then you change the value of W, you change the slope. So you change the slope according to this formula. This is that the key perceptron algorithm. You increment W by this quantity, eta multiplied by yi multiplied by xi. Eta is called the learning rate. It's a small number. We take, maybe some value of 0.01 or 0.1. It is arbitrarily chosen. You can also do it adaptively. It's a model parameter. It's the learning rate, and we call it as the learning rate in the in machine learning literature, because by giving high value, it might converge faster, but it might oscillate in some cases. It might go to positive and negative. The errors may not continuously decrease. Whereas if you take a very small value for eta, then it will converge very slowly. You make small changes to the value of W, so it changes really very slowly. So it may take many iterations to converge. So if there is a prediction error, you update the value of W using this formula. I won't explain why it is yi multiplied by xi. This is the exercise. I want you to think and find out why this algorithm works. So it is incremented using a formula, and you repeat for each data point. For each data point, you check whether there is a classification error. If there is a classification error, you update the value of W, and then you repeat. So if there are no more misclassification, everything is predicted correctly, the outer loop also terminates, you come out. Okay. So this is the perceptron algorithm, but instead of explaining the meaning of this equation, I want you to do this exercise. So you can do this. So what you have to do is, this is the algorithm. Why does the following updating procedure work in the perceptron algorithm? I want you to think and answer why it works. So that will give you some idea of how the Rosenblatt perceptron algorithm works. So you can do this. I'm stopping here during the break. You can complete it. Meanwhile, let me check if there are any questions. I've not been able to check the chat box. So let me see if there are any questions in the chat box. I'll try to. Book, I have already given the books. It's in the previous lecture notes. I have uploaded it on our website. On the workshop website, I have uploaded the first lecture note, which has the book.
Sir, in this algorithm, we only be changing the slope, right, sir? The intercept is not being manipulated by the.
Okay, I didn't mention that. There is a very good way of changing the intercept also. All you have to do is, you have to take the average of the projection distance, and the B will be just the midpoint.
Okay.
You compute the projection to every data point. So there
Okay,
is
sir.
a formula for doing that, very simple formula. So you don't need to do it iteratively. You can do it more efficiently by just taking the average projection over the hyperplane.
But this loop will take care of the changing intercept also, sir. I mean, it will be changing both intercept and
No,
slope.
but when you try it, you will see that it doesn't converge that fast. You can do it. You can also change the intercept using similar updating, but it doesn't converge that fast. You see it will oscillate quite a lot. It's not very effective. It's more. It's better to just take the average projection and take B as the average projection.
Okay, sir. Okay.
So the book is in the lecture notes. Excel sheet I'll try to upload during this break. Background noise, I don't know. Is it still there? Is there background noise now? I don't hear any background noise.
No background noise, sir.
Hmm. How do you change the line of hyperplane? Yeah, tell me. Yeah, direction. That is, I think you mean the slope of the hyperplane. So that is that perceptron algorithm. Similarly, B, right? I mentioned to you just now. Yeah, logistic regression. Binary logistic regression. Regression is another way of doing it. Classification, the problem is different. The mathematical definition of the problem is different. Regression is different. The objective function will be different in the two cases, but there are a lot of similarities. What is the value of y here? Okay, right. Okay, what is the value of y in the classification problem? Okay, so there are many ways you can do it, but the classical way of representing it using -1 and +1. We have negative class and positive class. I think it's a crucial point I forgot to mention. It is -1 and +1. Only then when you take the product, you get the correct positive value. So if the function is predicting a negative value and the point is a negative point, then the product becomes positive, right? So the value has to be -1 to +1. Yeah, the next question is if yp is equal to 0. That is because we don't want the hyperplane to pass through exactly the closest point. There should be some margin. So you have to treat it somehow. Make sure that the hyperplane is shifted slightly from the nearest positive point. That's why we still update it. Previous exercise you cannot do now because at the end of the day I close it because it is to be done in the class itself. It's also a way to find out how many are actually attending the class and doing it. Work recorded session will be sent to you at the end of this. It takes some time because it is uploaded on a YouTube channel and there are some problems because sometimes I show some videos which are copyrighted. So YouTube flashes it as a copyright violation. So we need to manually go and delete some parts of the video. So some editing has to be done. So that is going to be done in over time. But you will get a link to all the recorded sessions. Yeah, all the sessions will be recorded. It will be shared with you. So we will take a 20-minute break and we will come back at 11 o'clock.